The words, sharp and deliberate, had sliced through the humid air of our bedroom, carving a wound deeper than any blade could. My wife for 7 years, my everything for 10 stood before me, her posture a defiant challenge, her eyes, once filled with a tenderness I believed was solely mine, now glinting with a cruel indifference. Alexandra said to her friends, "Oh, Elise, can't live without me." I remember the taunt echoing, a venomous drip in the quiet aftermath of my discovery. The crumpled receipts, the unfamiliar scent on a pillowcase, the late-night texts I'd stumbled upon a cruel, undeniable mosaic. And when confronted, when the truth was laid bare, she had simply tossed her head, a smirk playing on her lips. "So what if I cheated on you?" The ceiling fan above spun in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, mocking the frantic beat of my own heart. Each revolution seemed to churn the disbelief in my gut, mixing it with a searing, unfamiliar bitterness. 10 years. 10 years of building, of loving, of breathing her in as naturally as I breathed air. 7 years of a legal bond, a promise whispered to the universe. I had been good to her. I had been everything to her. I'd nurtured her lesser ambitions as if they were my own, celebrated her small victories as if they were grand triumphs. I loved her for who she was, for who I believed she truly was. And now this flippant dismissal of a decade of my life, her life, our life. A tremor started in my hands, a cold dread that quickly spread. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a psychological dismantling. She wasn't just breaking my trust, she was actively, maliciously trying to break me. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating, until the only sound was the phantom ringing in my ears, a high-pitched whine of betrayal. The days that followed blurred into a painful kaleidoscope of forced smiles and internal screams. She didn't leave, not immediately. Instead, she chose to stay, a ghost in our opulent home, her presence a constant, searing reminder of her betrayal. And with her came her, the other woman, not a hidden shame, but a brazen, public announcement. I remember the first time I saw them together, unequivocally, in the harsh glare of a downtown charity gala. It was an event I had essentially orchestrated, my company the primary sponsor, my name emblazoned on banners and programs. She arrived on her arm, draped in a gown I had bought her, her laughter echoing a little too loudly across the marble foyer. The other woman, younger, vivacious, clung to her openly, their fingers entwined, her head tilted intimately against my wife's shoulder. It felt like a punch to the stomach. Yet I stood impassive, a statue of stone, the polite corporate smile plastered on my face. My jaw ached from the effort. Whispers like sharp little thorns started to prick at the edges of my perception. I saw the glances, the sympathetic frowns from older friends, the knowing, almost pitying expressions from business associates. My wife was parading her new lover around in public, in our company's inner circle. It wasn't just an affair, it was an act of deliberate public humiliation. Each sighting was a fresh wound, a new tear in the fabric of my dignity. The vibrant colours of the party seemed to drain, leaving only a monochromatic film of despair over my eyes. The clink of champagne glasses, the murmur of polite conversation, all faded into a dull roar against the blood pulsing in my ears. But the worst, the deepest cut, came when she started bringing the new lover to family gatherings. Not my family, of course, but hers. Her parents, who had always embraced me, calling me their brilliant daughter-in-law, their rock, now offered me weak, fleeting smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They would then turn and lavish attention on the interloper, their voices softer, their gestures more inclusive. It was grotesque. I watched them, my throat tightening with each forced swallow of wine. They didn't condemn their daughter's actions. They seemed to tacitly agree with them. They were complicit. The scent of their familiar home, a mix of lavender and old leather, once comforting, now felt acrid and suffocating. A cold, clear anger began to crystallize within me then, replacing the hot, messy agony. It was an anger born not of rage, but of a profound, devastating clarity. I saw it all with new eyes. The decade of devotion, the sacrifices I'd made for her career, the quiet ways I'd propped up her family, ensuring they lived comfortably. And in return, this public disembowelment of my heart and my reputation. Holding on to a woman who only shows tenderness to another is only cruel to myself. The thought solidified in my mind one sleepless night, staring at the cold, empty space beside me in our king-sized bed. The words weren't a plea for pity. They were a hard, unyielding truth. The love, which had once felt like a warm, comforting blanket, was now a leaden shroud suffocating me. The softness I possessed, the vulnerability I had bestowed upon her, had become my greatest weakness. And it was time to reforge that weakness into something else entirely. The air in the room seemed to cool, the shadows on the walls sharpening. I shifted, propping myself up on an elbow, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. Each one a tiny, distant star, indifferent to my personal hell. But I wasn't indifferent. I was awake. And from that moment on, a different kind of war began to brew within me. A silent, meticulous campaign that would ensure she, and everyone who stood with her in my humiliation, would regret the day they thought Elise Vance couldn't live without her. My heart, once a wellspring of unfettered love, began to calcify, turning into a core of unyielding, diamond-hard resolve. The sweet fragility of love had shattered. Now only the shards remained, and I intended to use every single one. The decision, once made, settled in my chest like a cold, heavy stone, pushing out the remnants of grief and replacing them with a stark, unsettling calm. The public displays of affection, her casual cruelty, the complicit nods from her parents, each instance had chipped away at my loving exterior, revealing the ruthless steel beneath. The woman I had been, the one who would have withered under such blatant betrayal, had died on that cold, empty side of the bed. In her place, a strategist had awoken. My first move was to observe. I became a silent, omnipresent spectre. I attended the same dreadful galas, endured the same strained family dinners, and sat through the same corporate meetings where her audacious affair was the unspoken elephant in the room. But I wasn't there to absorb more pain. I was there to gather intelligence. My eyes, once so quick to forgive, now honed in on details. I watched them interact, noting the new lover's preferences, her confidants, her casual boasts. I paid attention to my wife's business dealings, her nascent projects, her upcoming collaborations. And I paid even closer attention to her family, their investments, their dependencies, the intricate web of financial support I, Elise Vance, had so generously spun for them over the years. The weight of my wedding band, once a symbol of enduring commitment, felt like a shackle. I twisted it, a rhythmic, almost meditative action, as I reviewed the complex financial structures that intertwined my company, Vance Innovations, with her smaller, less significant firm, the Alexandra Group, and with several ventures belonging to her family. Our companies shared intellectual property, co-owned patents, and had joint ventures in emerging markets. Their smaller businesses often relied on Vance Innovations for licensing, distribution channels, or even direct investment. My corporate counsel, a sharp, unsmiling woman named Anya, listened patiently as I outlined my strategy. I want every shared interest disentangled, I told her, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. We were in my sleek minimalist office, the city sprawling beneath us. Every pattern, every joint account, every shared client, sever all ties, discreetly Legally. Anya, who had seen me through countless complex mergers and acquisitions, merely nodded. She understood. Her questions were precise, her suggestions even more so. We started by re-evaluating our internal projects. Any initiative that had even a tangential overlap with Alexandra Group was discreetly reprioritized, its assets shifted, its personnel reassigned. Client accounts where we had collaborated were restructured. It wasn't an abrupt severing, it was a slow, deliberate strangulation, like pulling threads from a rich tapestry, one by one until the entire pattern began to unravel. The shared properties were next. The vacation home in Tuscany, the loft apartment in Soho, the sprawling vineyard in Napa. Each asset had been a shared dream, now a bitter reminder. I instructed Anya to initiate legal proceedings for separation, aiming for full acquisition where possible, or a forced sale where necessary. The paperwork, thick with legal jargon, piled up on my mahogany desk, each document a quiet affirmation of my unyielding resolve. My signature, bold and deliberate, felt like a silent declaration of war on each page. Then came the sponsors. Oh, how I had sponsored them! Her younger brother, a struggling artist, received a generous stipend from Vance Innovations Arts Initiative. Her sister's failing boutique was propped up by our annual marketing budget, masquerading as a community upliftment project. Her parents' retirement community, a quaint little village, had an entire wing named after me, funded by my personal endowment. These were quiet acts of love, intended to soothe a wife's anxieties about her family, to elevate them without them feeling indebted. Now, they felt like levers of power. Review all philanthropic and sponsorship agreements with the Davies family, I instructed my CFO, Mark, a man whose loyalty to Vance Innovations was absolute. Identify all direct and indirect financial support provided by my company and by me personally. We need to phase them out gracefully, citing strategic refocusing or budgetary constraints. Make it airtight. Leave no room for legal challenge. Mark, a man of few words but profound understanding, raised an eyebrow slightly, then dipped his head in acknowledgement. He knew. My team, my inner circle understood. They might not know the excruciating details of my personal heartbreak, but they recognized the cold, calculating intent behind my commands. They saw the transformation in me, the sharp edges, the absence of the typical warmth. They simply adapted, becoming extensions of my will. The sound of keyboards clicking, printers whirring, phones ringing softly, it was the symphony of my dismantling. The cancellation of the arts stipend for her brother was framed as a re-evaluation of portfolio diversity, a polite corporate death knell. The boutique's marketing support was reallocated to digital initiatives with broader reach. And the substantial contributions to her parents' retirement fund would simply cease at the end of the fiscal year, an invisible cut that would only be felt later, slowly, insidiously. I heard nothing from them directly, only a vague, disgruntled mumbling through an intermediary about Elise being too busy. Good. Let them think it was cold corporate policy, not a deliberate personal strike. I knew this was a painful process for them, a slow bleeding out of their financial lifelines, but the thought no longer gave me pause. The cruelty she had inflicted, the betrayal her family had sanctioned, had cauterized my empathy. My focus was singular, to leave her with nothing, just as she had left me with nothing but a hollow echo of a decade. While these subtle shifts were underway, I turned my attention to the most potent weapon, the new lover. Her name was Serena Thorne, and she exuded a brash confidence that bordered on arrogance. She had a history, I was sure of it. People who rose that fast, who acquired such a superficial sheen of success, often had skeletons rattling in their expensive closets. Anya, I said one afternoon, leaning back in my chair, my gaze distant, fixed on the distant skyscrapers. I need you to engage our best private investigators. Discreetly. I want everything there is to know about Serena Thorne, her business history, her personal life, her financial dealings, every transaction, every associate, every past employer. I want to know where she's fragile, where she breaks. Anya's expression remained neutral, but I detected a subtle shift in her posture, a heightened alertness. Any specific areas of interest, Miss Vance? Everything, I repeated, my voice like finely ground glass. But pay particular attention to any questionable financial activities, any past legal entanglements, any shortcuts she might have taken. Rumor has it her recent investments have yielded suspiciously high returns. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Anya's lips. She understood the implication. This wasn't merely about protecting my assets. This was about uncovering a weakness, a fatal flaw. The game had begun, and I, Elise Vance, had no intention of losing. The scent of ozone, a precursor to a storm, seemed to hang in my office, a fitting backdrop to the tempest I was meticulously brewing. I was a puppet master, and the strings were starting to tighten. The investigators I hired, a shadowy but effective firm known for their discretion, began to peel back the layers of Serena Thorne's carefully constructed facade. Their reports landed on my encrypted laptop, dense with facts, figures, and grainy photographs. Each file was a piece of the puzzle, confirming my instincts. Serena, it turned out, was less a savvy businesswoman and more a skilled illusionist, adept at making high-risk investments seem like genius, and at blurring the lines of legality. I spent countless hours poring over the documents, my fingers tracing lines of fraudulent invoices, shell corporations, and suspiciously interlinked financial transfers. The smell of printer ink filled my study late into the night, a scent that now symbolized vengeance. She specialized in what was euphemistically called aggressive asset management, an elaborate dance around securities laws, insider trading, and even some outright money laundering schemes disguised as venture capital. My years in the market, my deep understanding of financial forensics, allowed me to connect the dots faster than any lawyer or investigator might. My mind, usually focused on innovation and growth, was now a finely tuned instrument of demolition. The thrill of uncovering each new transgression was cold and precise, devoid of any genuine pleasure, yet deeply satisfying. It was like dissecting a specimen, meticulously identifying each anomaly. I remembered her boastful laughter at one of those ghastly galas, talking about her visionary investments that were disrupting the market. Now, I knew exactly what she was disrupting, the very foundations of ethical commerce. As the evidence mounted, a new, more insidious pattern began to emerge. Serena Thorne wasn't just pulling scams, she was weaving them into a network that, perhaps unwittingly, had started to touch my ex-wife's business, Alexandra Group. Small loans from unregistered entities that later funneled money back to Serena, questionable supplier contracts that overcharged for services, and even a few charitable contributions that traced back to notorious offshore accounts. My ex-wife, in her blind infatuation and perhaps her own naive greed, had opened the door for Serena to potentially use Alexandra Group as a conduit, a convenient cover for her illicit activities, or at the very least as a beneficiary of ill-gotten gains. I felt a faint flicker of something akin to grim satisfaction. My ex-wife, who had prided herself on her street smarts and her ability to understand people, had fallen prey to a con artist whose primary asset was charm and a knack for manipulating vanity. The irony was not lost on me. Anya, I need a team of forensic accountants to cross-reference every financial transaction between Alexandra Group and any entity connected to Serena Thorne, I instructed a few weeks later, my voice a low hum. I want a clear, irrefutable map of where the money flowed, particularly any monies that originated from or passed through known suspect accounts. Link it. Build a case that would hold up in any court under any scrutiny. The forensic team, led by a former SEC investigator, moved like silent predators through the digital jungle of financial data. Their expertise was chillingly effective. Within a month, they had not only confirmed my suspicions, but provided undeniable proof of Serena's illicit activities and the implicit, if not explicit, involvement of Alexandra Group. My ex-wife had either been willfully ignorant or a complicit partner in the machinations. Either way, the consequences would be severe. While the investigation into Serena and Alexandra Group continued its silent crescendo, the consequences of my earlier actions were beginning to surface for her family. I started to hear rumbles, not from them directly, of course, but through disgruntled former employees of Vance Innovations or mutual acquaintances. Her brother, the artist, had suddenly found himself without his monthly stipend. He was reportedly struggling, his art sales stagnant, his studio rent overdue. The whispers described him as increasingly desperate, his calls to his sister going unanswered. Her sister's boutique, no longer bolstered by Vance Innovations' marketing initiatives, was now suffering. Foot traffic was down, inventory was piling up, and the once trendy shop now looked tired and forgotten. I'd seen it myself, driving past one rainy afternoon. The display window was dusty, the mannequins looked forlorn. The bright, confident light that had shone on Alexandra Group periphery was fading into dullness. And her parents. Their quiet complaints about the rising cost of their luxury living and the sudden lack of additional funds from their daughter, meaning from me via my company's support to her, reached me through a former family friend who was now a partner in one of my venture capital firms. They weren't bankrupt, not yet, but the comfortable cushion that had allowed them to live an extravagant retirement was deflating rapidly. Their golf club memberships were apparently under review, their annual trips to the south of France postponed. Such trivialities, yet for them, a world-ending inconvenience. The knowledge was like a slow, acting poison, seeping into their comfortable lives. Their silence, their earlier tacit agreement with my humiliation, now had a price, and I was collecting it, piece by agonizing piece. The satisfaction was purely intellectual, a triumph of strategy, not emotion. My heart remained a cold, hard knot. I knew the perfect moment to strike was crucial, not too soon, allowing them a chance to recover, not too late, allowing Serena to cover her tracks or for my ex-wife to disentangle herself further. It had to be a moment of maximum impact, when their complacency was at its peak, when they believed they had truly gotten away with it all, believing the storm had passed without touching them. My ex-wife and Serena were becoming more visible, more assured in their public displays. They had even secured a significant new investment for Alexandra Group from a lesser-known holding company, an entity I recognized from the private investigator reports as one of Serena's complex financial fronts. That was it. The final, damning piece. The perfect moment to expose her illegal activities would coincide with this new, highly publicized partnership. It would not only implicate Serena, but drag Alexandra Group down with it, showing the world that my ex-wife was either an accomplice or a fool. Either way, ruined. The trap was fully set. I had gathered every shred of evidence, documented every illegal transaction, mapped every connection. The wires were taut, the springs coiled. I simply had to wait for the signal, the perfect, calculated trigger. The air around me felt charged, heavy with the unspoken promise of what was to come. I could almost taste the metallic tang of impending change, a storm not of nature but of human design, and I was its ruthless conductor. The signal came disguised as a glossy press release. Alexandra Group announced its new strategic partnership with Thorn Capital Group, Serena's primary financial vehicle, touting a multi-million-dollar investment that promised to revolutionize the lifestyle technology sector. I read it in my office, sipping black coffee, the aroma bitter and sharp. The article, splashed across industry journals, painted a picture of two visionary women, my ex-wife and her lover, poised to conquer a new market. It was precisely the public fanfare I had been waiting for. They had overplayed their hand, flaunting their ill-gotten gains and their perceived victory. "Execute the plan, Anya," I stated calmly, placing the newspaper clipping gently on my desk. My voice was low, yet carried an undeniable authority. "Contact the SEC, the Department of Justice, and the relevant federal authorities. Provide them with everything. Anonymously at first, then fully cooperative. Let the evidence speak for itself." Anya nodded, her expression grim but resolute. "And the media, Miss Vance?" "Once the investigations are officially launched, feed the information to our trusted industry contacts," I instructed. "Not a smear campaign, Anya, just facts. Undeniable, documented facts about the legal challenges facing Serena Thorn and the financial risks associated with Alexandra Group's new partnership. Let the market panic on its own." The first domino fell quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the hallowed halls of federal agencies. A phone call, a secure email, a meticulously compiled digital dossier filled with audited reports, transaction histories, and sworn affidavits from whistleblowers we had discreetly cultivated. The wheels of justice, slow as they sometimes seemed, were set in motion. Within days, the whispers started. Stock prices for Alexandra Group, though not publicly traded, saw a rapid devaluation in private equity markets. Their existing investors began asking uncomfortable questions. Then came the official notices. A federal investigation into Thorn Capital Group for suspected financial fraud and money laundering. And then, the critical blow, an inquiry into Alexandra Group financial records due to its close ties to Thorn Capital. The news spread like wildfire. The articles moved from industry journals to mainstream financial news outlets. "Vance Innovations' former partner under federal scrutiny," blared one headline. Another, "Lifestyle tech company Alexandra Group caught in fraud scandal aftermath." Suddenly, the glamorous veneer of my ex-wife's and Serena's visionary partnership was ripped away, revealing the rot beneath. The domino effect wasn't just corporate, it was intensely personal for them. Clients, once eager to associate with the next big thing, began to pull out in droves. Reputational damage spread faster than any virus. Key employees at Alexandra Group, sensing the sinking ship, started to tender their resignations. I heard about it all through the intricate network of contacts I had meticulously built over 2 decades. Their world, once so shiny and promising, was crumbling from within. The financial repercussions were swift and brutal. Banks froze accounts linked to Serena Thorn and, by extension, to Alexandra Group. Asset seizures began as the authorities moved to prevent the flight of illegally obtained funds. Their lavish lifestyles, once paraded so openly, were now under intense scrutiny. The expensive cars, the designer clothes, the opulent dinners, now just symbols of their impending downfall. And my company, Vance Innovations. Amidst the chaos, we thrived. We had anticipated the market vacuum. As Alexandra Group founded, we strategically acquired some of their former high-profile clients, offering stability and ethical practices where their competitors offered only scandal. Our stock soared, our reputation for integrity solidified. investors flocked to us, recognizing the stark contrast between our unwavering principles and the spectacular collapse of our erstwhile competitors. My leadership was praised, my foresight lauded. I moved through board meetings and press conferences with an unshakable calm, my face a mask of professional resolve, betraying no hint that I was the architect of the storm raging outside. The irony was delicious. While my ex-wife and Serena were being dragged through financial and legal inquiries, losing everything they had built or stolen, I was solidifying my empire, ascending to new heights of success. The scent of success was no longer floral or sweet. It was the sharp, clean scent of ambition realized, of justice delivered. Her family, already reeling from the quiet cessation of my financial support, now faced a new, more public humiliation. Their daughter, once a beacon of what they perceived as success, a success largely built on my foundation, was now embroiled in a federal fraud scandal. The social ostracism was swift. Invitations ceased. Whispers turned into open scorn. Her brother, his artistic career further in tatters, spiraled into depression and alcoholism. Her sister's boutique, already struggling, shuttered its doors, unable to weather the combined storms of my withdrawn support and the scandal's fallout. Her parents, now without the additional funds and the social standing they once enjoyed, found their lives shrinking, their comfort evaporating. They learned, slowly and painfully, that living off someone else's generosity meant you ultimately existed at their discretion. And my discretion had run out. A profound silence descended upon their world. The public humiliation they had inflicted upon me was now returned 100-fold, amplified by the unforgiving lens of the media and the relentless grind of the legal system. I continued to work, to build, to expand Vance Innovations, my focus unwavering. Each success, each new contract, each soaring stock value was a testament to my resilience, my vision, and the cold, unyielding force that had replaced my broken heart. I was watching the meticulous unraveling from a distance, a detached observer of the ruin I had orchestrated, and within that detachment, a strange sense of liberation began to bloom. The call came on a Tuesday. The caller ID glowed with a number I hadn't seen in months, a number I had deliberately archived and ignored. My ex-wife. I let it ring until it died, then texted Anya. Block this number and any others associated with her or her family from reaching me directly. Route all communication through legal. A firewall, both digital and emotional. But she was desperate. She found a way. A week later, a mutual acquaintance, someone distant enough not to be directly implicated in the fallout, but still connected to our former social sphere, called me. Their voice was laced with an awkward urgency. Elise, I just ran into Alex. She's really not doing well. She asked if I could ask you to meet her, just to talk. My first instinct was to refuse, to dismiss it entirely. But then a cold curiosity, a desire to witness the devastation firsthand, took root. This was it. The confrontation, the payoff for every sleepless night, every calculated move, every shard of my broken heart. Tell her, I said, my voice smooth, unhurried, that I'll be at the Obsidian, my usual corner booth, precisely at 7 this evening, no more than 10 minutes. She comes alone. The restaurant, a chic, exclusive establishment I co-owned, was dimly lit, designed for hushed conversations and power plays. The scent of aged whiskey and truffle oil clung subtly to the air. I arrived early, settling into a dark leather booth that offered a commanding view of the entrance. My outfit was simple but impeccably tailored, a charcoal suit, a silk blouse, however unadorned. I ordered a glass of cool, crisp Pinot Grigio, the first sip a cleansing ritual. At exactly 7, she appeared. Alex. My breath hitched, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in my chest. The woman who walked through the opulent doors was a ghost of the woman I had loved. Her expensive dress, likely a relic from her past life, hung loosely on her frame. Her hair, once glossy and vibrant, was dull, streaked with silver, and badly in need of a cut. Her eyes, once so defiant, were sunken, rimmed with purple shadows, and filled with a raw, desperate fear. The arrogant confidence, the flippant smirk, all gone, replaced by a harrowing fragility. The scent of her, once familiar, was now tinged with something sour, like desperation. She spotted me, her gaze darting frantically around the room, then fixing on my impassive face. She started towards me, her steps hesitant. Every eye in the room, I imagined, was on her, on us. But I remained a statue, my expression unreadable. She reached the table, hovering uncertainly. "Elise," she whispered, her voice reedy, barely audible above the soft jazz music. "Thank you for meeting me." I simply gestured to the empty seat opposite me, a silent command. She slid into it, her movement slow, as if burdened by an invisible weight. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I simply observed, letting the silence stretch, letting her drown in it. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together on the table, her fingernails chipped, a stark contrast to the perfectly manicured hands I once admired. Finally, the dam broke. "Elise, how could you do this to me?" Her voice was a choked cry, rising slightly, drawing a flicker of attention from a nearby table. "What were we all these 10 years?" The words, so devoid of self-awareness, so steeped in her own self-pity, hit me not with pain, but with a resurgence of that cold, diamond-hard anger. The question, asked with such a pathetic urgency, was a cheap attempt to invoke a past that she herself had summarily dismissed with a cruel taunt. My hand, without conscious thought, moved. It was a swift, sharp arc, connecting squarely with her cheek. The slap echoed in the suddenly silent room, a sharp, concussive sound. Her head snapped to the side, a crimson mark appearing instantly on her pale skin. Her eyes, wide with shock, slowly turned back to me, brimming with unshed tears. The sharp, metallic taste of residual anger filled my mouth. "Oh, now you remember the past 10 years?" I snarled, my voice low, dangerous, cutting through the stunned silence. My eyes, I knew, were blazing. "Now that the child is gone, you remember to feed it?" The restaurant was utterly silent now. Staff had frozen. Diners stared, a mix of shock and morbid fascination on their faces. But I didn't care. All I saw was her wounded, pathetic face, a canvas for the rage and contempt I had held captive for so long. Her mouth opened, then closed, no words coming out. She looked utterly demolished, stripped bare of all pretense and defiance. The crimson mark on her cheek throbbed, a visible testament to the force of my stored anger. It wasn't the kind of rage that made me lose control. It was the kind that brought a terrifying, surgical precision to my actions. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper, ensuring my words were for her ears alone, though their impact filled the room like a physical presence. "You destroyed a decade of my life with a casual shrug, a cruel taunt. You humiliated me, paraded your indifference for the world to see, and dragged your family into a tacit agreement of my pain. You thought because I loved you, I was weak. You thought I couldn't live without you. You were wrong." I sat back, my chest rising and falling evenly, the adrenaline coursing through me like cold fire. She stared at me, her eyes filling with a complete, utter comprehension of the abyss she had fallen into. There was no more defiance, no more plea for understanding, just the profound, shattering realization of what she had lost, and who had taken it. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. This time it was my silence, my dominance. I picked up my glass of Pinot Grigio, took a slow, deliberate sip, my gaze unwavering from her ruined face. She finally pushed herself to her feet, stumbling slightly, her gaze cast down, unable to meet mine. She mumbled something I couldn't quite catch, a pathetic whimper, before turning and practically fleeing the restaurant, a shattered shadow disappearing into the warm city night. I watched her go, then, slowly, deliberately, picked up my napkin and dabbed at my lips. The sharp adrenaline gave way to a profound, almost dizzying emptiness. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. It was more like the quiet satisfaction of a complex calculation finally reaching its precise, undeniable conclusion. The reverberations of that night at the Obsidian rippled through our shared social circles with the speed of wildfire. Whispers turned into definitive accounts, punctuated by the lingering memory of the slap, the sting of my public accusation. But unlike her earlier humiliations, which had been met with tacit agreement or pity, this time the narrative shifted. No one dared to question my actions or my rationale. The sheer devastation of her downfall, so meticulously orchestrated and so undeniably linked to her own choices, spoke volumes. She and her whole family were ruined. Serena Thorne, after a prolonged legal battle, was found guilty on multiple counts of financial fraud and was serving a substantial prison sentence. Thorne Capital Group was dissolved, its assets seized and liquidated to pay restitution. The intricate web of deceit she had woven had finally collapsed, trapping her completely. And Alex, my former wife? Alexandra Group was a wasteland, its brand irrevocably tainted, its intellectual property sold off for cents on the dollar to cover mounting legal fees and debts. She was facing personal bankruptcy, her name synonymous with scandal and poor judgment. The once luxurious life she had built was gone, replaced by the grim reality of legal battles, creditors, and social ostracism. She lived in a small rented apartment, a far cry from the opulent home she had once mocked me in. Her family suffered just as profoundly. Her brother, his artistic dreams long dead, was last heard of working odd jobs, his spirit crushed. Her sister's boutique had closed, and she had moved away, unable to bear the weight of the family's disgrace. Her parents, stripped of their comfortable endowment and their daughter's former financial support, were forced to sell their retirement home, their perceived status evaporating overnight. The intricate network of support and influence I had once provided for them had not just been severed, it had been weaponized to ensure their complete and utter downfall. The silence from them was absolute, heavy with the weight of lost privilege. My company, Vance Innovations, thrived. Freed from any entanglement with Alexandra Group, its trajectory had soared. We had not only absorbed key talent and clients from the vacuum created by their demise, but had capitalized on our enhanced reputation for integrity and strategic foresight. My name, Elise Vance, was now synonymous with unwavering leadership, groundbreaking innovation, and a formidable resolve. Quarterly reports consistently exceeded expectations. Our stock value climbed steadily, and I was honored with industry awards and sought-after speaking engagements. The scent of success now wasn't just ambition, it was the sweet, heady aroma of vindication. The victory was complete, utter, total. Yet, in the quiet moments, late at night when the city slept and my penthouse suite felt vast and empty, there was a different kind of silence. The silence of a battle won, at a profound cost. The woman who had loved with an open heart, who found joy in shared dreams and tender gestures, was irrevocably changed. The process of dismantling, of unraveling, of orchestrating such cold, precise ruin had left its own indelible mark. I would stand by the window, a chilled glass of water in my hand, looking out at the glittering tapestry of lights below. My company was at its peak. My power was undeniable. My future boundless. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, my worth. I had proven in the most brutal and effective way imaginable that I could indeed live without her, and that my resilience far surpassed her petty cruelty. Sometimes a fleeting memory would surface: the curve of her smile, the warmth of her hand in mine, the scent of her hair after a long day. But they were like faint echoes from a distant past, belonging to a different person, a different lifetime. There was no lingering grief, no regret for what I had done, only a quiet recognition of the ruthlessness that now resided within me, a protective shell forged in the fires of betrayal. I was stronger now, undeniably, wiser, certainly. But had the ruthlessness consumed all tenderness, or had it simply fortified my true self? I didn't have a definitive answer. The path I'd walked had stripped away the softness, leaving behind a core of unyielding strength. I had fought for my survival, for my justice, and I had emerged victorious. The woman who stood poised at the pinnacle of her empire was a testament to that. She was Elisa Vance, and she would never again allow anyone to believe that she couldn't live without them. The future awaited, unburdened by past betrayals, shaped by the formidable hand of the woman who had learned the hard lessons of love and loss and risen from the ashes, colder, sharper, and utterly, magnificently free.